So as we begin this morning, here's the question I would like you to think about. Are you a risk taker? Or do you like to play life really safe? Many of you are familiar with the great baseball player, because this is baseball season. His name was Babe Ruth. In 1923, when you think about it, almost 100 years ago, he had the record for the most home runs. He also had the record for the highest batting average. And he had the highest record for most strikeouts. In his career, do you know how many times he struck out? Probably you don't. Probably you don't even care. He struck out 1,330 times. But he goes on to say that if he didn't swing, he would never have hit all those home runs. And he is regarded by many as one of the great baseball players ever. You see, he was a man who in that area of life was willing to take some risks. But there are a lot of people today who don't want to take any risks. They really want to play it really, really safe. But let me suggest to you this. If you don't take risks with life, you will never discover your full potential. If you don't risk in life, there will be all kinds of longings and desires that you have in your life that will never be fulfilled. Wouldn't it be kind of sad to get to the end of your days and say, you know, I wish, or if only I had done that. And opportunities come by in a myriad of ways over the course of our life's journey. And sometimes we say, nah, I'm just going to play it safe. I'm going to play it safe. So for a few moments this morning, I would like all of us to look at our own life and think about the potential that we have, where we are in this season of life, and we're all in different seasons of life. But God is giving us opportunities every single day. And He is calling us to step out of our comfort zone and to be willing to take a risk. In the second reading this morning, that was just a very brief clips of the Apostle Paul. He was a man who was an incredible risk taker. He said that God called him into places, and he didn't even know he was going to survive. And yet he said, God provided all kinds of ways of meeting my needs according to His riches in Christ Jesus. But there's a better story that will help us to take a look at our life. And the first part of this story was from the Gospels. And it's a story about a very unique opportunity. In this story, the CEO of a company, the chief executive officer, is leaving town. And he gathers 3 of his employees, and he says to them, I'm going to entrust my property or my goods to you. Now to one, in the version that most of us are familiar with, he gave 5 talents. To another, he gave 2 talents. And to the third employee, he gave 1 talent. Now, most of us are not used to talking about talents. We think of a talent that could be, my ability to sing, or my ability to bake pies, or whatever it happens to be. That's not what it's about. A talent was an amount of money. And I did some of the math, and here's what it amounts to. A talent in today's economy is worth $1.25 million. Some would say it was the equivalent of 33 kg, or if you're American, 75 pounds of gold. So to one guy, he gave over $6 million. Like he hit the lottery. But the other 2 wasn't very shabby either. One got about $2.5 million, and the third guy got $1.25 million. Now you must think about it in the context of that day. A lot of us are not used to living day by day wondering, how am I going to meet the needs of tomorrow? Is there enough food in the fridge? We live in a part of the world where that is not a reality for many people. But there are many parts of the world where it's virtually a subsistence level of living, and they're wondering, will I have enough just to get by for today? And that was the culture into which Jesus was telling this story. So when you think about it, this master, or this CEO, leaves, and he says to these 3 employees, you look after what I am going to give to you. It was incredible wealth. And these 3 men are given, I assume they're men, could be women, these 3 individuals are given an incredible chance of a lifetime. They're going to have an opportunity to exercise their initiative. They're going to be able to test their skills in the marketplace. They're going to be able to rise to greater levels of responsibility. Because let's face it, if you were entrusted with $7 million from your employer, you think, I have a new level of responsibility in terms of what I am going to do. And so you could say for these 3 people, it was a defining moment in their life. Now, up to that point in life, they had simply lived in a way that they said, I will carry out the orders that the boss gives me. The boss says, I'd like you to do this, and they go and do it. But no longer will that be the case. Their lives will no longer be, endless routine. Rather, they're not going to have a life that's predictable, and they're not going to have a life that is really safe. They're going to be asked, are you going to risk it? Are you going to be a risk taker with what you have received? And generally, as we look at it, these 3 people not only are given the chance of a lifetime, but there are 2 responses that when you are given a chance to risk. The first one is, I'm going to go for it. And the second one is, don't take any risks. Learn to play it safe. So we are told that the first employee who was given 5 talents, he decided that he would respond at once. He knows that he will never have a chance like this, and therefore this individual seizes the opportunity. I think this is what God wants us to be like. He has entrusted us with an incredible gift. Now, if you notice the story, every single person in the story has received a gift. And so God is saying to all of us, I have gifted every single one of you in a very unique way. And so when we think of the gifting that God has given to us, I think we can summarize it in a very simple phrase. The gift that God has given to us is our life. And we're all so uniquely different. We're hardwired in a different way. So think about, it's your mind, it's your body, it's your ambitions, it's your will. It is the resources that God has given to you. And we're all quite different. But this is the gift. And we also notice in this story that there are no non-talent people. Everyone has been gifted. And God says, I want to partner with you in your life. It's given to us by the Master who says, take these gifts and use them. Now everybody has something to give with their life. The question is, what will you give your life for? Will it really be worthy? How are you investing your life day by day? So the first employee and the second employee, one had received 5, one had received 2. They invest their talent or the amount of money at once. And the third one, he fails to do this. Just think about it. He takes the greatest gift that he has ever received or ever will receive. What does he do? He buries it in the ground. He said, I want to play it safe. I want to play it safe. But in the story we discover that there's always the settling of accounts. This is something the third servant actually, I think, forgot. That the Lord of the gift is coming back. And as the Lord of the gift returns, he will ask a question. And the question is very simple. But he simply says, "What did you do with what I gave you?" There is a level of accountability. Have you ever had to give accountability? You know, once a year I have to go before my boss, the dean, and I have to give an accounting in several areas of my life of what I have done. I am sure that you have had to go before your employer and sometimes give an accountability. If you own the company, maybe you go before the board of directors. But whenever you have to give an account, have you ever tried to find a way to massage your answer or to charm your way out of a difficulty or just somehow figure, I got to get out of this? A couple months ago, I was in New York State, and I had stopped with a friend, and we were by the side of the road, and we had a large road map opened up. And this lady drove up in a car, and she was very friendly, and she said, "Are you lost?" We said, "No, we're not lost. We know we're here. But we're just trying to figure out what's the best way to get to there." And she said, "Well, let me help you. I've lived around here all my life." We said, "Well, that's very nice." Now, I noticed on her car, and maybe this is just an American phenomenon, she had all kinds of flashing lights. She had lights in the dash. She had lights in the back window. And so after she gave us directions, which we couldn't understand, we said to her, "So why do you have all of these lights?" And she said, "Well, I'm a first responder. And in the States, a lot of them work on a volunteer basis, then they're paid when they respond, right? Like volunteer firefighters, EMS workers, etc. And so she said, "It also helps me to stay out of trouble." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, the other day I was going on an off-ramp, and lo and behold, the state trooper pulled me over and said, 'Madam, you were speeding.'" And she said, "Really? How fast was I going?" He said, "You were going 82 miles an hour. And she said, "I don't even drive my ambulance that fast." And he said, "You drive an ambulance?" She said, "Yes, I'm a first responder." "Oh, that's different." And he tore up the ticket. I got to use that line, but I got to get a flashing light for my car. So you see, sometimes we try to get out of the situation that we're in because there is a day of accountability. So if you speed and the local police force put on their lights behind you, you have to give an accounting for what you were actually doing. So the master is coming back, and the master will ask this question: "What did you do with what I gave to you?" You know, he's not going to ask other people, "What do you think about so-and-so?" Or "What do you think they did with their life?" No. He asks each one of us, "What are you doing with the gift that I gave to you?" Now, the man who took the 1 talent and he had buried it, and I often wondered, why did he do that? Did he feel inadequate? When the others received 2 and 5 talents, was he comparing himself to them and feeling somewhat insignificant, as if, I'm not really all that great and they're much more influential than I am? We don't know. But we do know in this story that there are 2 variables that come up. And the first one is this: there are different amounts that were given to each person. One received 5, one received 2, one received 1. And that simply reflects life as we have it. Some people are gifted in ways that are visible and often celebrated. We see some people who have a multitude of gifts and abilities, and others perhaps it is less noted. That's one variable. The second variable is this: what does each person do with what they have been given by God? And the important factor is we are not to compare ourselves to other people. Rather, we are to ask this question, God, what do you want me to do with what you have given to me? So the third servant gives a reason for his passivity. He gives a reason why he buried what he was given in the ground. And I would call it the great excuse. And the great excuse is this: I was afraid. I was afraid. You know, fear makes a lot of people bury the treasures that God has given to them. Fear keeps a lot of people from responding to the challenges and doing great things for God with their life. As you begin to look at Scripture, there are many people who face situations that were rather fearful. One of the bravest persons, I think, in the Old Testament was a beautiful young woman whose name was Esther. And Esther was a Jewess who was taken into a court of the king. And she was just one of many. And as she was there, her uncle was a man who was refusing to bow before the second in command of the kingdom. And that irritated that man to no end, and he made a plot to destroy every single Jew in the realm. And the uncle of Esther came to her and said, you need to go before the king and speak. You need to defend the people of your race against this injustice. Now, in that culture and at that time, unless the king invited you to come forward and you entered into his presence without an invitation, you could be sentenced to death. Rather a harsh environment, a rather scary environment to live. And Esther thought about it, and she decided to pray. And her uncle said to her these words, "It is for a time such as this that you have come to this place in life." And so Esther goes before the king, knowing that her life could be taken if he is not pleased with her. And he extends the invitation for her to come. And she speaks. And the end result of the story, if you read the book of Esther, you discover how she was gifted in such a way that she saved an entire nation. Was it fearful? Absolutely. Scary? Perhaps beyond belief. But she knew that God had gifted her with this opportunity in life to do something in a unique way. One of the sobering aspects of this story is that the servant is judged. The servant is judged not for doing bad things. The servant is judged for doing nothing. He just does nothing. And there are two words that are given to describe this servant. You are wicked and you are lazy. Not too many people today admit to being lazy. You know, when people are going into job interviews, they ask them, so what are your strengths, what are your abilities, what do you do well? And then often they will throw out this question. So what are some of your personal weaknesses? And here's some of the great answers that I love. Well, you know, one of the big weaknesses I have in life is I push myself too hard. Or another one is I expect too much of myself. I've never heard anyone say, you know, actually, I'm kind of a lazy lout. Why is he described as lazy? I think in the Christian life, we need to understand that we are responsible to God for our lives. Life is not about self-preservation. Life is not just about my own personal fulfillment. But my life is about being a good steward of the life that God has actually given to me. And the Lord comes down pretty hard on this life of inactivity, this life of doing nothing. So if you could think ahead of your own life to the day when your life is over And you think about, you come into a small room, and the CEO of the company is there. And the CEO has a DVD player. I know they're almost extinct, but that's what we're using. Has a DVD player, and it's about your life or mine. And the label on the DVD is this: what might have been. What might have been. And that's about what my life might have been if I would have allowed God to work in and through me. What would your giftedness be like if you had trusted enough to be daring? How would you have used your financial resources if you had trusted God enough to be generous? What would your character be like if you had trusted enough in God to live a life that says, God, above everything else, I want to please you? I believe all of us here really want to maximize our days. And so we need to move away from our fears and be willing to risk, because there are final rewards. God has great things in store for those who use his treasures wisely. And so the reward for this servant who had 5, and for the servant who had 2 talents, was simply these words: well done, you have been a good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of the Lord. And then there is a surprise. He doesn't say you're going to sit on a fluffy cloud in heaven. There's going to be no condo in the sky filled with upgrades. He said, you have been faithful in a few things. Now I will put you in charge of many things. Now is the time for real work. You see, heaven is not harp playing. It is not about endless rounds of golf. It's not some great retirement center. It will be the place where we experience the fullness of adventure and creativity and fruitfulness in the presence of Almighty God. So this morning, I need to ask this question: what has God given to me? And how will I invest my life in the kingdom? It's very easy to drift through our days. We can get up, we can go to work, we can come home, we can eat, we can watch TV, we can retire, and then live on our pension till we die. Or we can say, God, I want to take each moment of every day. I want to live this day to the full. God, this is your day, and it is your gift that you have given to me so that I can live. You may have talents. You may have material possessions. You have time. How will I choose to invest it? Do I want to invest it in such a way that it brings great rewards for God? Or am I sitting on my life and actually burying it in the ground? Some people might think, well, from a human perspective, maybe I don't have much. Maybe I just have one little ability in life or one little area in life. I don't know. Listen, there was a little boy, and God took a couple of pieces of bread and a few fish, because this little boy gave it to Jesus, and it multiplied and fed thousands of people. Or he took a man who had a speech impediment and said, I can't speak. And God used Moses to be the deliverer of Israel and defied world powers. Or he took 12 bumbling followers called disciples, and he created a community that has spread throughout the world and has changed the lives of millions and millions of people. Here's the bottom line. God will take what we offer to him, and all we have is our life. And if you say, God, I give my life to you, I will willingly be a risk taker as you speak into my life and ask me to do things. I will be a risk taker because I want to make a difference that matters for eternity. Let's pray together.